Hello, my name is Mike Bublitz. I'm doing this as part of a computer security course, ICS 382 at Metropolitan State University. My instructor is Jennifer Grant, and I would also like to state that this video is solely for educational purposes, and I'm not liable for any damages that could be caused using these demonstrations. So today I'll be talking about data privacy and regulations, focusing primarily on the United States. I'll also be showcasing a few tools that you can use to help protect your privacy on the internet. An example of some of the things are the Tor browser, a searchable database called Have I Been Pwned, and just a comparison of a couple of popular VPN services. So these are a few of the major international laws and regulations that directly or indirectly affect cybersecurity and privacy. In the case of the first one, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, this was actually passed within the European Union, but the other four are all acts within the United States. And the first two, the GDPR and the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, were more directly written to address privacy in the age of the internet, whereas the other three are used more in the grounds of litigation regarding cyber privacy and security. And so, for instance, within the last couple of years, you may have noticed a lot of websites prompt you to accept all cookies when you visit them, and this is actually due to the GDPR. And so a lot of people, myself included, sometimes just hit accept all. And just to explain what cookies are, essentially it's something that a website gives to you and stores on your computer that helps them track information about you when you visit the site. It retrieves that cookie and the information that they stored in it. So here's a meme, written here to kind of illustrate that of just kind of accepting all cookies. Unfortunately, you're not even always sure exactly what you're accepting in that, and actually, a lot of websites don't even need to have that prompt and that explicit consent for accepting all cookies. The GDPR requires sites, depending on what they store in the cookie, to have that explicit consent. So a lot of websites, they're not actually keeping that information where they need your explicit consent for that cookie. But again, they're just kind of including that on their website as a safeguard. So unfortunately, these kind of requirements can get a little bit watered down. As just a safeguard in sites just to implement them, just to be 100% sure. And so data privacy within the United States. So again, there's no federal act that widely governs data privacy or cybersecurity. This has been left up to the states, and states have drafted and adopted their own policies. So the CCPA, for example, and again, a lot of these acts do have implications beyond just the border, from which they're written. So California, for example, has effects on organizations that do business within California. But it also goes further that the contractors of those companies also have to adhere to those standards. And so given how many businesses do business within California, this affects a huge number in how they store information and conduct their business. And often they're going to change it overall as an entire, organizational procedure, because they're not going to keep track and have these kind of two different rules for people who live in California and people who don't. And again, what you'll notice here is that because there is no federal act, it's a bit more piecemeal. So things like the Federal Trade Commission Act are actually used as grounds for litigation in a lot of times data privacy lawsuits. So for example, the Facebook scandal with Cambridge Analytica. Essentially, Cambridge Analytica gave users a survey to respond to and required that explicit consent to share information, and users who took that survey were giving that explicit consent. However, Cambridge Analytica was allowed to access the information of those respondents' friends without any kind of explicit consent, from those friends of the respondent. And so, under Section 5 of the FTC, a lawsuit was brought against Facebook as far as unfair or deceptive acts or practices. Then, within the United States, you have HIPAA. The U.S. Privacy Act of 1974 pertains to how federal agencies can store information on people. But what you have here is, kind of a piecemeal acts to address privacy within the United States. And, these last three really are not written with the age of the internet in mind at all. And it becomes confusing for what these cover, what is not covered. It can be confusing not only for individuals, but also for companies to kind of, actually stay within line, of all these different acts and laws. So what is being done now to address this? So 31 states have enacted cybersecurity privacy-related legislation in 2019 alone. And some also suggest that given enough time, the Data Quality Act of 2001 will give the Office of Management and Budget specifically power to regulate what is considered reasonable aspects of cybersecurity and privacy. But again, there's obviously a lot of debate around what is considered reasonable in regards to privacy and security. These are very complex issues and will require the input of experts. Part of the problem is also how quick and reactive, cybersecurity and privacy laws and, software and everything has to be, because it's always changing. So writing any kind of very strict or very, very hard requirements can quickly become outdated. Another aspect to consider, especially with these requirements, is, considering what is reasonable can also depend on the size of a company. So requiring, a business that has 50 people compared to Google, what is, reasonable for those different businesses as far as what privacy and security they can offer is very different. So the CCPA does address this based upon employee size. Other options are also gross revenue of a company to kind of, help to not stifle small businesses from being able to actually adhere to these standards. And here's just a graphic on some of the discrepancies between U.S. state privacy laws. So, it can be a little bit confusing, and also, in North Dakota, for instance, you can access the information, but you have no right to delete that. In others, obviously, not a right to correct it. So, it can kind of, again, create confusion for these businesses. And if your information is not being well protected by them, and you don't want them to have that information, not being able to delete that, their ownership of that is a little bit alarming. And then it begs the question, too, of how do you even learn when your personal data has been compromised? So because there's no, wide federal regulation that requires companies, and, doesn't have this clear, cut kind of protocol to follow. State laws, have picked this up, but they vary quite a bit. So every state does have a law regarding notification of data breaches, but again, this varies about, when is the notification required, who has to be notified. So this can be very confusing, again, for an organization. And, a lot of times you might not even know directly, but you might, find out through, the news or something else that a company has been, breached. And so, it can be a little bit alarming that you're not even finding out from the company itself when they are directly aware. So these are just a couple things, both to kind of protect yourself and in the first example, have I been pwned? This is just kind of for interest more than anything. This actually just is a website. You put your email address in, and essentially this website has just compiled databases of affected email addresses that have been involved in data breaches. So, excuse me, you can type in your email address, and it'll tell you, which specific data breach your email address has been involved in, if it's been involved in any. And again, you may be surprised to find that your email address has been a part of something when you really were not made aware of that at all. And another tool, come back to the VPN services, but the Tor browser is an anonymous browser, so you can anonymously browse the internet. That's exactly what it does. You can download it for any system, and essentially, a lot of browsers can track information on you, but this is a simple way to avoid that. And some websites do actually block the Tor browser, but for most things you can get through and use this. And then we have here NordVPN. So a VPN service is just something that helps to protect you when you're browsing the internet, and essentially it acts as a tunnel for you connecting to the internet, and how you connect to the internet itself. So your internet service provider, whoever that might be, can see everything that you do on the internet, what sites you visit, and a lot of times they will anonymize that information and sell that to marketing companies. So while your information, such as your name, might not be attached to your browsing history, they are oftentimes using that information kind of in aggregate with other users to sell that. So this is one that I would recommend. It's not free, but it is highly rated, NordVPN. And I'll do just a quick comparison here too of a couple popular VPNs. A lot of them do have deals as well, so not a sales pitch by any means for NordVPN, but you can get decent deals through them where it's only a couple bucks a month, and it is a good way to protect yourself both in a security aspect and in privacy. And NordVPN is one that doesn't keep logs, and so I'll explain a little bit more about what that means, but essentially it just means that they're not tracking or keeping any of your web traffic information on their own, so they're not selling it, and they're also not housing it anywhere for anyone else to even access. So let me switch over here. So this is just a little Excel spreadsheet that I made regarding a couple popular VPN services. And so I've included here the company's jurisdiction as well, so where they're based out of. It might be kind of a minute fact, but given the recent controversy with TikTok, a lot of times, where a company is based out of can and does have an implication with, how they may be forced to share information that they collect with the government, out of where they're based. So for NordVPN, they're based out of Panama. Because Panama doesn't have a records retention requirement, so they're not required to keep those logs. NordVPN has also been independently audited to prove that they don't have logs. You can find it on their website and on the third party that conducted the audit, just to see the results of that if you're curious. ExpressVPN, again, all of these do not keep logs, so they're not keeping track of your information. And this was actually inadvertently proven to not keep logs because in 2017 they were subjected to a raid by Turkish officials, and demanded to hand over information. However, because they don't keep logs, they didn't have any information to hand over. And so they actually use RAM-based memory on their servers. So essentially, when those are powered off, the information is wiped. Hotspot Shield. This is one that does offer a free version and claims to be no log, but they do allow marketing, and so there is some speculation about what their partnership is with those marketing companies, and in that access that they grant, and especially because within the last year, the parent company ownership for Hotspot Shield has changed. Viper VPN is another company that was independently verified. Previously had kept logs, but now have changed that. So before they were logging IP addresses, but now do not. Surfshark, just another one, overall well-reviewed and budget-friendly. This is one that doesn't have an independent verification of no logs. Another one that's based out of the British Virgin Islands because there is no records retention requirement there. But one thing to keep in mind is these all have claimed to be no logs, but using a company that has been independently verified is important because a lot of times, they may not keep a log of certain information, but others they do. Um, you know, not a log of all of what you're doing on the internet, but they may keep, for instance, your IP address or something along those lines. And so you can get a little bit into, obviously the false advertisement, and you may be paying for something that really is not any safer. So again, a VPN, just a good way to protect your privacy and also acts as a security feature. So, a good tool overall, and just something to keep in mind, and to do your own research as well, definitely, when you're looking at different VPN services. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.